All right, all right. Hello, hello. Welcome everyone back to Destination Happy Hour, a Destination Happy Hour show. Would like to be out there, but we have some weather issues, so we're going to do it from right in here. We have currently, right now, Funding Jim, who's been all over the place this week, so we're going to get into everything. How are you doing, sir?
Everything's going great. Coming up roses.
Good. And Gunther, who is all over Twitter, and I was actually at the PulseChain virtual conference hosted by Maddie Allen, who will be here later. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. No complaints. Thanks for
Good,
having me
good.
on.
Oh, heck yeah, man. So, yeah, we're just trying to do, kind of like I'm not in studio, obviously. So just, doing some casual chats, while we're just all kind of just floating along in this bear market, whatever you want to call it. Like, um, you know, we can't talk about, big pumps or anything like that. Or if we do, they're usually bear market pumps. We've seen a couple of those. But we're kind of like finding a base for Hex, I would say, with like 3.5 cents or so right now. Um, any, just throwing that out there, just because it's top of mind. Any thoughts on the current price action? Are we just kind of like grinding around here till the overall market figures out what it wants to do? It's my thinking that everything's pretty much still led, and I know we don't like it, by traditional markets. So specifically, say Bitcoin is led by the Nasdaq. Nasdaq leads Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin leads the alts, arguably Hex as well. And I know some people don't like that, but at the same time, like if you look at the daily, it depends upon your time frame, right? So if you're looking at like a daily chart of Bitcoin, if I see it's down $1,000, I can almost guarantee you that Hex will be down in sympathy with it. Now, if you expand your time frame, yes, Hex has outperformed Bitcoin tremendously. I think it will do that in the next run. But just in terms of where we are now, we're just kind of like waiting to figure out where things are headed in the next 3 months, 6 months, could be a year. I'll throw that out there. And who wants it?
Gary, please. Beauty before age.
So I really am not, obviously Gunther is an expert about chart, and chart is market psychology, participants in the marketplace, what are they doing? I don't think that sequestering, basically buying a price point on Hex or anything else, is storing up like air in a balloon. I don't think of it as grabbing air, which is economic energy, and putting it into the balloon, and then no longer pumping in air means that that air comes back out in value. I think my opinion is that people that are looking at the product, that have appetite for the product at that given moment, are the buyers. Those are people that are actively buying, right? They're paying attention maybe to the chart, maybe they're paying attention to community or news events, and then they're making a decision to hit the button and say, I want some of that, right? So it's always what is for sale at the time in the marketplace, and who is the buyer at the time in the marketplace that decides what the price will be. So we see right now 3 cents, 3.5 cents, which come down from wherever it was, 50 cents, all the way down to where it is now. And that to me is not because air is coming out of the balloon. It is because the community basically for a year hasn't been putting air into the balloon, right? And that means new users, new purchases, new economic energy that you get from your job or from the sale of some asset or whatever. That might be part of what moves the price at that moment, and you can see it reflect into the chart. But really, it goes to the sentiment. How many people are actively talking about the product to new faces, to new people, new communities, new pockets, right? Who's doing that? Most of us, many of us, I wouldn't say most of us, but many of us started to see the stress of gas prices when you end stake and say, wow, $300, $500, height of the bull market, $1,000 bucks. I just paid X dollars to end this stake. And yes, it was economically worthwhile. You're like, wow, okay. I made this amount, and yes, this transaction cost is very high, but it's worth it. So people continue to, end stake mature stakes or whatever, but they suffer through that price. And then I think that what happened is obviously PulseChain, PulseX narrative, sacrifice, all these things like that were to address the challenge of onboarding cost. $50 to bring a guy in, $100 worth of transactions to one, get into Coinbase, send over a wire transfer. $500 was being eaten up very quickly to get in for a new guy in transaction costs. And then a lot of us have stalled over this past year about bringing in new faces, new communities because of that. So it's not that there's not demand for the product. It's that the community doesn't talk about that single product when it used to only have one product to talk about. Now we talk about PulseChain, we talk about PulseX, we talk about every other kind of coin that's inside of the ecosystem. Now we have 120 products that are probably projects and products that will launch on PulseChain, right? And we will see how Hex performs when the voices don't have the, honestly, excuse of transaction cost. They don't have the excuse to say, wow, it's so expensive to get involved with Hex right now, because it's like $4. Like your onboarding cost in Ethereum to buy a new stake and stake it is very low now, right? This is the bear market. And the bear market's where you should probably set a lot of your stakes if you're going to participate in the product. But don't.
Yeah, I think I ended this. Sorry to interrupt. I think I ended a stake like last week. It was like 5 Gwei or something, like crazy compared to hundreds of what we've been used to. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the big thing is when we have our voice again, and when we are advocating, and we are eating the dog food that we're talking about. That's that's when I say dog food, it's kind of a catchphrase instead of startup stuff. Is that if you see utility in the product and you're using it yourself, you're going to talk about it because there's benefit to using the product. There's utility. So I think when we get back to that narrative, and it may take a year, it may take, because there's going to be enthusiasts about PulseChain, PulseX, incentive token, party token, Pulse Doge, liquid loans. There's going to be incentive for all of us as we diversify and as the ecosystem grows to talk about hundreds of things that are on this whole network of PulseChain. And when we say, hey, is there this thing we want to call a store of value? In my opinion, in the past, in 2017 up until recently, there's been this Bitcoin altcoin seasonality. And I think that as a community, we can go to a Hex altcoin, meaning the PulseChain ecosystem coins, as that narrative. I think we can pivot to that over the next year to 2 years. So price is reflective on the buyers, and we don't have the buyers because we're not talking to new buyers. My opinion.
It's a strong point. Like I feel like so much of our marketing is like almost like preaching to the choir. Like we're trapped in like some bubble. Like we really, and Funding Jim, you made some, like you had a good tweet towards me. Like you really have to get out and attack other communities, and not just like crypto, but like I have a vision of just like going out and just blanketing the world. Like start following just people that no one else is following, and just start having a conversation with just everybody else. Totally leave the bubble. I think that's just way more effective, because if you want to push the price up, like you need especially for an asset like Hex that's more mature now, you need a lot of money to do that, because the moment you start injecting hundreds of millions of dollars into the asset, you do have the risk of like some users using that as exit liquidity and just pushing that right back down. So I guess the buy pressure, as we know, has to be greater than the sell pressure to really move it back up. I think we need to give Hex some time, actually. A lot of people became wealthy, even people like myself that came from nothing, became from poor backgrounds, didn't have a lot. A lot of people became wealthy overnight, and you could clearly see that on the price chart.
Yeah, I think it's a great
the psychology of just how like the scale of how it's changed. I think that also like amplifies just like the emotions around it, because I think at the same time, people had like this like kind of wave of like sudden wealth syndrome, maybe feeling kind of like disconnected from the people around them because they experienced awesome performance, but not all your friends did. And combination of that with like big retrace, I think that has also created more kind of panic, and that feeling of like watching huge gains come and go, I think is going to be a tough class of sellers to break through over the course of the next couple of years, because all the people that wish they cashed out at 50 cents, if it creeps up to 20 cents, like maybe they'll be unloading there. And so I think, we'll definitely see that, and also the people who bought the top that are like, oh shit, I'm down 90%. Now I'm down 50%. I'm going to get out. And so there's kind of two different classes of kind of desperate sellers in there. And I think that once they're kind of, cleaned up and cleared out, then, that's like the new foundation. It's kind of like the new foundation that was found, midway through 2020, where it was like that bear market after that first big move up. And then, once those new sellers were gone, then it kind of moves on. And so, honestly, what if the price had, instead of going to 50 cents down to here, what if it just slowly chugged along up to here? We'd all be euphoric. We'd all feel like geniuses, Yeah. And so it's kind of funny, just like how that feels when it's going up versus when it's coming down.
Yeah. Now, welcome, Dip Catcher, by the way. Didn't give you a formal intro.
But, it's all good. I hopped on
good to have you back on, bro. And I brought your chart up in recent weeks. I think it was, it could have been a month and a half ago now, but I think it's the chart that you're kind of referring to, or it references the point that you're making, to where, if I recall correctly on the chart, I mean, you had Hex at maybe like 2-3 cents 2 years from now, because of the thesis that you're going off of, that it's going to take a lot of churn for these sellers to realize, oh my gosh, do I get out now? Do I'm not going to see those gains again. Rush, for the exits. Meanwhile, people are buying on the other side. So it's like your chart kind of had like this churn for a couple of years before we eventually, see those former prices of, say, 10, 25 or more.
Yeah, and that's by no means like a prediction. It's like, like a very,
that was interesting. It was a great piece to talk about.
And like, but all it takes is like one big demand catalyst to completely change it all, and
I think that'll be PulseChain personally. And I've said that here. So I think that could negate that, but could PulseChain not come out until 2024? So it's like,
I always think, no, we're coming up on the launch date of July 32nd. That's when I think it's going to be.
Right.
July 32nd.
Yeah. So it's coming, but also there's kind of no rush. Like right now, the gas fee issue isn't as bad as it was. It's kind of like it's a kind of a time of consolidation where it's kind of hard to not that it's hard to onboard people now, but it's like when prices are going up, everyone's asking you to onboard them. When prices are going down, none of your IRL friends are even talking about it. And so I think that just like as the season kind of churns, that's probably what'll drive it. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's necessarily a rush to get onto PulseChain, and there's certainly not a rush to release it. Like that should be bulletproof, because that whole copy of the network plus the PulseX markets between the coins on the networks, like that mechanism in itself is probably the most important thing in crypto right now as far as scaling solutions go, where you kind of have this like parallel universe where you're connected by a market and they're identical. And so it actually makes for, I think, a really resilient system where because there's an equal copy to everyone, it's like no one got anything. And so it's just like as if it was like that from the start. And then, you have that really resilient kind of like dual chain where you can always offload activity to the other chain, and you're doing that via a market. And that's and like the market like ratio between the assets on one versus the other is just how the market measures that risk of moving that activity off to that other chain. And so I think that that's like a really important solution in general. And so I say, please, Uncle Rico and the whole cast and crew, please take your time and and nail that, because that secret sauce of the system state copy plus the focus on the liquidity between those two pairs, like that's like the killer feature of PulseChain. So I want them to nail that opportunity, because that in itself is a huge opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. That's a solid point. I like how you it's very well articulated. Another thing to consider is that, like, think about like how long Bitcoin took to return to like its previous high of $19,666 or $891 or whatever it was, basically 20K. It took 3 years for the asset to return. You know, it was just like a long bear market. And I think with Hex, we might see something similar to that. So we reached the peak of 52 cents in September of 2021. So maybe it's like September of 2024. And again, this is no crystal ball, but just like a conservative like projection of like maybe when we'd retest 52 cents. That gives us enough time to kind of shake out a lot of weak hands, shake out a lot of unbelievers. And it just kind of fits with like market cycles and market psychology. You know, the price will kind of just, I feel like now is probably, I feel like it's a bottom, like 95% down. If you're not buying that with an amazing asset like Hex, then I think you don't really understand markets. I think it's a solid like entry point. It's just like Gary was saying, like you have to have a long time horizon, and just you can inject the capital now, but just be patient and wait for it. Like build your position. If you don't have a Hex position, then sure, you could build a solid position over the next couple of years, build in a bear market. And when the bull market comes, you'll be very, very happy, I think.
Yeah. And even kind of like continuing on that analogy with Bitcoin, like when Bitcoin went from 20K to 3K, it hit 12K. I think it was 12K. And then it dumped back to 4K on the COVID dip. And then it, you know, so even within that 3-year bear market, there was like a mini, in that case, it's like a Bitcoin size pump, you know, maybe 2 or 3X. Whereas in Hex, like we could experience like right now a 10X move followed by like another year-long bear market and get back to the levels that we're at now, and then be on our way from that. You know, like that absolute, like within a bear market, there can be still face melting performance just in short periods of time. And
it's
so
it's more likely though to be like a lower high, right? So it's more likely to to go to like maybe like 20 cents or 25 or 30 cents at some point, like a huge bounce. Like you like basically wreck everyone that sold the bottom at 3 cents or whatever. But then of course, like that's now like exit liquidity. So like bigger players, like some of us sharks, like maybe we're like taking some profits. And then again, it kind of comes back down, like you're saying, like with Bitcoin. But then eventually you just got that slow grind, that nice like rounded bottom, and you get a solid reversal back to 52 cents, retest it, maybe a pullback at that point because you're retesting the all-time high. And then eventually you're just breaking 52 cents and going for a new all-time high, I think. I mean, these are just how markets work.
And also, if you compare right now, considering how much liquid Hex has actually been, you know, effectively removed from circulating supply, like last year with with the sacrifices to Richard's address, and then now with, I mean, you know, Maximus, you know, 300 million Hex there, like comparing the number of Hex that has been removed from the supply, or at least delayed, compared to the amount of new supply from like first month stakes that ended in the last year.
It's
actually like that fresh
increased. It's actually increased, to be honest. The supply has actually gone up because you have users that have like ended their stakes, and they've also they've got their principal plus interest.
Yeah.
So still when you have that 3% that's floating around in circulation, it's still like a large like percentage. So even though we had all those like sacrifices, you still have like a large like floating supply in circulation, and we're talking about billions. Now it's not all moving, right? Obviously, these large players that just like the money's like sitting dormant, or they're doing like Habana, you do rolling stakes, for example. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's another example of just like where you just keep like compounding that interest. So that's not really like sell pressure, but there's just a lot just like floating around. And, you know, you keep seeing these guys like dumping millions, like dumping 10 million Hex or whatever. The crazy thing was the LP guy, the guy that pulled the LP and then dumped 140 million. That actually for me was the bottom. I was like that when the largest LP rug pulls 140 million Hex and market dumps it, who has enough who has enough economic mass and is willing to push the price down at that point? I guess that's my argument for a bottom for Hex.
Mm-hmm.
Put into the private chat the ether scan for the token of Hex. And what's interesting about it, I've commented about this before, and you know, sometimes it's because of advocacy through the internet. We have these streams and we make content and we talk about Hex or the value proposition. But sometimes it's outreach, like the German and the Austrian people that did that 6 months tour for all the cities. Back when they were doing their tour, you could see, you know, 400 to 500 people a week that were coming into the Hex, as far as, even if it was small, maybe not, it's a lot of economic mass, but you can see how many holders. So when you look at this for Hex, you can see that the holders right now is 305,602. That's not individuals, that's how many wallets, right? And if you say, what's the psychology, or why would you start a new wallet? Like, say you already have wallets, and then why would the same population add new wallets? Maybe they have a different use case. Maybe they have different, you know, they're trying to segregate out their, you know, why am I using this wallet for this purpose, or addressing this particular person, things like that, right? But the growth is not as steep. And this is a 14-day window. This is going from July 1st or 2nd, I think. And what I remember seeing when I scrolled through it earlier is the first day was like 5,144. Yeah. And then if you look at the slope as you get to today, the 14th, it goes to like 600. So that means there's like 450 people over a 2-week period. If you had that as an average, it's only 900 per month as far as new holders, or at least new addresses by the same holders. So we're just not addressing Hex specifically when we talk. We talk crypto content. We talk about everything that's going to come on the system. Most of the content creators, whether they're OG or new people, you know, they are learning Hex as well, but it really is a background token at the moment. I think that what's going to happen is, of course, there's going to be some, if he does it publicly and Richard makes commentary that here, get ready, it's going to happen on Thursday, that kind of stuff. Sure, I could see the price spiking, because the first content that's going to be out there by most of the advocates of Hex is going to be, here's your opportunity for a split. It's a stock split. Here's an opportunity for doubling your tokens, so to speak, because you have one on one network on the other network. There's going to be all kinds of content that says, you know, you can trade for a day ratio instead of price, things like that. So there's going to be a lot of that kind of stuff. So I can see the price moving, and I can see even people that might have been in the way on the sidelines, when people choose to feel bold enough to say, hey, it's ready. You know, that thing I was talking to you 6 months ago, a year ago, here it comes. Here's the best shot you got. You're going to see the Hex price move. Now, will that have staying power right after PulseChain launches? Honestly, I don't think so. I think that there's going to be a trade. I think that there's going to be the Pulse version of Hex. People will have bought. They will they will buy into the Ethereum version, at least for the first day. The only thing that can trade pre-bridge will be PRC20s. Hex will be one of those, and probably the most supported. And some people are going to buy into the narrative that an L1 is going to matter the most over the next 6 months or a year, because most of us honestly have been saying that. Most of us have been saying that I think that PLS is going to outperform PLSX, and then later you'll see a pivot to go to PLSX, right? So expect the audience to pretty much 80% of them to do the same thing that we've been talking about. And we haven't been talking about 20% more shares per year that you stake on Hex. We haven't been saying that for close to a year. We've been talking about this other narrative. And do I think that it has high value? Absolutely. Do I think that there's great opportunity for you to accumulate Hex as people sell Hex into whatever pool you might be an LP for? Yes, there's great opportunity if you have a long perspective. If you in your heart of hearts are saying to yourself, 1 year from now, I'm going to talk only Hex. Because why? I got it at massive cheap because I traded PLS or PLSX or whatever other coin or whatever, while everyone's running from Hex on once PulseChain goes live, and they're running into PLS or PLSX. You're going to watch those charts. People like Gunther, that's an expert in looking at chart. He's looking at psychology of the market. most of us that make content on YouTube or Twitter or whatever, we're commenting to the community that exists and hopefully to onboard new community members. And most of that messaging, I think, will trend toward what I just said. PLS first, PLSX second, Hex as a store of value narrative, very similar to the Bitcoin season versus the altcoin season narrative we've heard for years. And if that plays out well, it doesn't really matter what you accumulate. You still want to get the best price. Everybody wants to get a deal. Everybody wants to get a discount. So we're just going to watch the charts, and we're going to sadly become traders for the next year instead of a store of value narrative. We're still going to look at charts, man.
I think it's actually really good that now there's a time where it shifts from like the people that experience the most gains just being the ones that just got in first to now like that people are kind of forced to make these really tough decisions that are impossible to predict what the outcome is going to be. I actually like that there's going to be kind of like this reshuffling where people that maybe didn't get in on, days, day 20 through 40 and that experience like order of magnitude performance versus people that did get on day 20 through 40 who like just picked the wrong strategy and, had a huge drawdown. Like I kind of like this like reshuffling, and it's kind of what people liked about some of the Bitcoin free claim mechanic is that like the narrative that Richard used to promote around you can become the whales, like we're making new whales. I think that this whole PulseChain shakeup it's another opportunity to kind of create new whales and shake shit up a little bit. So I think that's going to be a good thing in general, because then it's like a new class of users who experience really high performance that they can go and promote and be kind of like a beacon of hope for new people to get in. Because whereas right now it's like, it's kind of the same cast and crew who are the ones that have massive performance and they've already told thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And I think, a new circulation of really high performing people in our ecosystem is that like that's really the best marketing. Like the best onboarding marketing is watching your friends get rich.
Yeah. And speaking of onboarding, I think that's like a perfect segue into the Twitter Spaces conversation it was outstanding yesterday, in my opinion, with Richard talking to a bunch of, call them NFT/Bitcoin bros, what have you. It was fascinating to listen to just because everybody reacts differently to Richard. And I thought the moderator did a great job with it. I wasn't there right at the very beginning, but even after the fact that Richard left the space, he was actually one of the ones who was actually very mannerly and thankful for Richard coming in. And then you saw the Bitcoin maxis grow their balls and courage at the same time and start speaking. And of course, tone deaf Vase, took the mic after that, just conveniently enough after Richard had left. So, but I wanted to bring that up as well because Funding Jim, you came onto that space. And first of all, I want to echo Motley's sentiments from last night. I thought you did just an outstanding job. Because I thought if I were Motley, I was thinking the same way. And I know Motley had his hand raised to where he just wants to jump in like UFC style, get in the octagon. And that's my mindset when I hear some of these guys like the DP guy. And it was enraging, but at the same time, you kept your cool and you had, a great rebuttal to the tone deaf Vase. And at the same time, you gained a bunch of followers on Twitter. So one, you represent the community, in my mind, just outstandingly, and you were rewarded for it with the follows. And I know you talked about it a little bit. I don't want to make the whole stream about that because you did speak at Maddie's conference last night. But just from your introduction, I also wanted to touch on that before I turn it over to you. I think it was kind of like a mini clinic as to how to get into a space. So pretty much you said who you were, what your background is, and why you should care. And if you make that introduction as a Hexkin, I think that should be, if any Hexkin can listen to that. It was very brief. It was probably maybe like 30 seconds, if I recall correctly. But it was very well done because it's like, okay, well, who's this new guy in this chat? Oh, this is, Funding Jim / Gary. This is his background, and he knows what he's talking about because he's been in crypto for this long and knows this, and this about crypto. I thought it was excellent. And you want to speak a little bit about any recollections about 24 hours later after the fact? I know you've deconstructed it a little bit, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I recorded that. Similarly, I know a lot of people reposted, and some people did the screen grab of on Twitter when they're doing the spaces, the recordings. When you play back the recordings, all you can see are the speakers. You can see who of the panel, maybe 10 or 12 people, are able to speak and when they're speaking, but you can't click on it. As far as I could see, I can't click and see what their handle is on the playback that Twitter prepares for us. So I always try, if anybody flags me, if something's going on that's interesting enough to jump into and record, if I'm not doing it, somebody should do it. Because I recorded it and I kept it, as far as my cell phone, doing a screen capture kind of version, so it looks very familiar. But then I just posted it on YouTube. It takes like all day to do this kind of process. But basically, I prepared it in a way that you can see that it's PulseChain, PulseX, and hex.com as far as the websites. Richard, Bitcoin, Ethereum, as far as the YouTube thing that I just posted. It's 5.5 hours that stream was. And, what I noticed very quickly is what we're used to inside of Hex and being around Richard and things like that is he comes into a room and he is the most intelligent in the room about that particular subset. He is the most intelligent person. He can debate, but he is a technical expert in a lot of ways about things that we don't even think about, even if we're in the field. And so when he had his conversation, and first of all, it was, NFT kind of stuff that we hear all the time about. I don't like people overpaying for a JPEG, that kind of thing, right? And there was obviously pushback because a lot of people inside the room were about NFTs and they're about Ethereum and so forth. But he did temper it. And I noticed it wasn't a stumble, but I noticed it was pause that I haven't heard him do before about why an NFT is flex value. Because they related it to a wristwatch, Gucci outfit, fancy car. And it was a status symbol. It's a proof of waste example on purpose, right? Men especially, if we can, grab the eagle feather and stick it into our cap, because that's showing we climbed the mountain, right? If we can pull the pearl from the bottom of the ocean, shows something, it's a status thing, right? These kinds of, why are they valuable? It's because they're difficult to get. So when they said that, and the guy, I think Golden Monkey guy or whatever he was, some NFT guy, his NFT is $4.4 million, right? Someone had insulted him by saying it was worth $2.5 million. So when he said it's a flex value, and he says, hey, I don't have a diamond, but people know, at least I'm signaling to other people, and it gets me permission to rub elbows with other people that are in the particular monkey group or dog group or whatever it is, right? So the power really is a lot of the same thing that we've known for hundreds of years about social signaling, especially between men. One, we can do it through our brutalism and our athleticism and our height and our reach and our ability to destroy. Like you can be barbarian Conan and you're like, yeah, don't fuck with that guy. Or you can be, $3,000 shoes, $7,000 suit, $100,000 wristwatch, babe on the arm, right? These are all social signals. That's what they are. And so to some degree, I saw Richard halt and pause because I think at least for a moment, it seemed to click. He's like, yes, I like flexing. And they're like, so do we. And this is how we're doing it. And so I think I'm not saying he's going to be the most to embrace it, but he does like to be like, I'm going to put the F in NFT, it's going to make it fungible, that kind of thing. So he does like his position. Now, is it a good idea for 100 people to parrot and echo exactly the same form and fashion that Richard does? No, I don't think so. I don't think that we have to have the same exact words. We don't have to have the same tactics. We don't even have to have exactly the same message. I am very thankful. I've said this earlier in the stream today. I am very thankful that Orca orchestrated a lot of a Hex Orca curricula. I mean, he changed his name on Twitter a bunch of times.
He
But
orchestrated.
He orchestrated a lot of this. Yeah. So he had the longest tweet stream room or whatever, talking mostly about Hex and about the product of Hex and hexagons and so forth. So I really commend him. And I think that was like 6 months ago or however long ago. And a lot of people came into the space, athletes, celebrities, during that marathon. It was a great effort. Now, he has a different tact about how he hosts, a different tact about how he lets people have a platform and speak their points. And he doesn't jump down their throat, right? He's done very well about that in the past. Recently, the only time I've seen him jump down the throat of anybody has been other hexagons. And it's been the anonymous face hexagons, honestly. So ones that, they're zealot, they're keyboard warriors, they're defending the realm, right? But they're just not as socially calibrated about how they frame things and why they're doing things, why they're saying what they're saying. I appreciated that Richard came into the room abrupt, Kool-Aid man, how he acted, right? And the host tempered him a little bit, right? But he didn't chastise him. That's the wrong thing to do. But he did temper him well in a way that Orca is famous for doing. Orca did the same kind of thing when he was doing streams. And this host, I think, did an excellent job about tempering bold personalities, okay? Now, did he win the hearts and minds of the first guy that he embraced? No, he did not. And that guy ditched out of the room and left. 100,000 followers that we could have gotten to that guy's audience, right? So a little bit of social calibration would have reached 100,000 people instead of chest thumping a little bit too much, in my opinion, on that moment. And so I tried, when I finally got the microphone, Richard had already left the room, right? I was trying for an hour and a half to get into the room to get to be able to speak. And tactically, I didn't speak for like 15 minutes. One, there's only 10 people that have the speaker icon underneath their title. There was 3,500 people in the room. Some of those people, even if you're not speaking, are just going to click on your profile. That's what they're going to do on their cell phone. They're going to see your profile. So I'm not saying you shouldn't be a voice, but I do notice that Jack Levin tends to do this. He comes into the Twitter room because he has 300,000 followers. Often he gets admitted very quickly as a speaker, but he doesn't often speak. And he actually, I think he grows his audience partly because of how he frames his profile on Twitter. So I wanted to take that tactic the first 10 minutes, and I didn't actively see if I was getting followers from it, but I suspect that was part of it also. And then when I did speak, it wasn't because, and again, when I first got the mic, I was frustrated, just like Motley was. They had said a couple of things that were very obviously wrong, saying, Richard
just flat out falsehoods.
He's flexing because he's selling his hex on their heads, because he's doing a Charlie Lee kind of thing or whatever, or a Vitalik Buterin kind of thing, right? By selling onto his audience. And this is provably not true. This is provably on the blockchain, at least the OA address and daughter addresses. I think that there's some discrepancy to some small part. But for the most part, I think that holds true, that he hasn't sold into the audience that has gravitated around the product. So versus taking that tact on my first speaking engagement to these people that have 600,000 followers. I saw Whale Watcher, 1.2 million followers. I saw, obviously David Gokhshtein has a large following, and I've engaged him in the past in these Twitter rooms about some topics. What I wanted to think about was kind of the kung fu. You're not hitting the target, you're going through the target. You're punching through, right? You're following through. So I was looking to engage their audience. And how can I do that best? It isn't to be a sycophant and echo exactly what they were saying. I wasn't doing that. I was saying, here is your frame, and they have their frame. And I was coming up with a thought process about how can I elegantly get this across a different point of view. First thing I could have said was all the blockchain stuff. First thing I could have done was been the sycophant to Richard Hart and only been a Maximus about him or his position in the ecosystems. But I didn't do that. I wanted to hold my own and talk about some of the things that were a little bit baiting to Tone. Tone Vase is speaking to an audience of 3,500 people at the same time that are mostly about Ethereum, and they also talk about Bitcoin to some degree, but they were mostly NFT curious, mostly Bitcoin, Ethereum curious, and he's talking about NFTs when he's never owned one, he's never bought one, he's never been gifted one, he vocalized that he's never owned a single Ethereum. He has no idea what MetaMask is. He doesn't know anything about a stable coin that is on chain. Even his trading positions.
He's proud of it when he makes this, and when he makes this argument. And you can't make that argument or any kind of argument if you have no knowledge or experience of what you're arguing against. It was amazing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and he was extremely. He's like the points that I put to him specifically were, why is it the technology of this 13-year-old revolution of Bitcoin? Is it the technology that prevents stable coins, DEXs, tokens to be built, smart contracts? Is it the technology? Because he was saying, no, Ethereum had the first mover advantage. Well, Ethereum was fucking 2014, dude. Like, is it the technology, or is it the culture? And it is the culture. It's the culture. Now, do I benefit, and does Hex or Hexicans or Ethereans or Pulsicans, do they benefit by burning that bridge and saying, these people have experience in cryptocurrency, they already understand the difference between a cryptocurrency and fiat, they already have a lot of the same terminology and nomenclature and security mindedness, but fuck those guys, they're Bitcoiners. No, I don't think that that's the message that I want, the next few years of my life to be about. I want to be more open, because that human beings mirror human beings. If I am more open and respectful in my conversation, I can win hearts and minds. I can't win hearts and minds when they're no longer at the table. So that's what I try to do.
Yeah, I thought it was an outstanding job, and I know you spoke on it. Maddie's virtual PulseChain conference last night. And speaking of, how you doing down there, Maddie? I wanted to bring you on and say, first of all, thank you for putting this all together again. You're the one of the conference organizers in the Hex Richard Hart ecosystem, one of the main ones, the originator, the Vegas man, and now you've done the PulseChain virtual conference. Your take on how night one went, preview possibly, if you could give us one of tonight, which starts, I think, in 2 hours, and tomorrow night as well, if you'd be so kind.
Well, this is one of the strongest crypto communities that has ever existed in a bear market. And I think, even though many people are predicting that the general crypto market could go lower before it reaches new all-time highs, I think that the amount of participation on day one was really encouraging, especially after people had gone on a marathon of listening to this epic Twitter Spaces that had occurred for 6 hours earlier in the day with the NFT people that never get together with all the Bitcoin people that never get together with all the Hex people. And I just want to, again, give props to Gary and Richard. Tone Vase got 50 new followers on Twitter yesterday. Gary got 618. Richard got 1,800. So the numbers don't lie. Even though Tone talked longer than anybody else, people didn't want to hear what he had to say. And it was the Hex speakers that really, won the room over as much as anybody could. So that's really encouraging. Day 2 here is going to be interesting because, you know, we're going to have Aubrey de Grey speak. And personally, I think that there is some controversy surrounding the $27.5 million that was raised for charity that could be newsworthy. I think that it's something that, you know, if Richard decided to start making noise about it, that could land him in the mainstream news again, just like he did with the diamonds and everything. I'm not sure, you know, maybe his PR prowess is beyond mine, and maybe he'll choose not to do that. But either way, I know that there are a lot of people such as myself who care about longevity and are curious to hear from Aubrey de Grey, to hear, you know, he's going to be covering what the money has been going to so far, what the breakthroughs have been, you know, in the past year since people gave. This is the 1 year anniversary of people donating to the Sens Foundation for the PulseChain sacrifice. And then he'll also be able to talk about what's possible in the future if people continue to donate and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, I'm really excited about that.
Awesome.
Let me see.
I'm going to be on tonight.
Yeah.
I'll say if you have the speaker list, throw it up there, and I'll put it on screen if you like. But
absolutely. Let me
hey,
share my
I hate to interrupt, but I have to run. I just have a family emergency that I have to take care of. So I apologize. I hate to leave you guys, but thanks.
Great having you, my friend.
Good to see you.
See you guys later. Have a good night.
Thanks for being on.
I think that, you know, the more that the community can share out about the Pulse conference, you know, there were 120,000 addresses that participated in the PulseChain and PulseX sacrifices. And we didn't have 120,000 people watch this yet. Now, the online Hex conference that happened in January, the final day of that did get 99,000 views between my channel, 29,000, and Richard's channel, 70,000. So, I mean, that's really awesome that so many people stay tuned. I think when you look at the Bitcoin OGs that stream, they're not getting 100,000 views on anything typically. Maybe on a few things they are, but if you actually dig down into the numbers, you can see that Hexicans watch much longer than Bitcoiners do. Hexicans hold longer than Bitcoiners do, mostly because we're time locked. But yeah, I think that that there's a lot that distinguishes our community. We're gonna hear from lots of the first 3 speakers tonight will run through lots of projects that are being built on PulseChain, even the ones we didn't have enough room to include in the schedule. And, you know, I think it's something like 150 projects that are being built that we know of.
Might one of them be Dipcatcher?
Well, he'll be in the second
Maximus
section,
thing,
which is so exciting because we want to hear an update from Liquid Loans, but Hedron and Maximus both have hopefully new things that they're willing to tell us more about.
Oh, we have Dipcatcher on. He's going to tell us some new things, I hope. Well, so yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and shout out to you for all the brilliant things that you're cooking up.
Thank you, Dipcatcher.
Please continue.
Oh, yeah. I started talking to Cabana. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and, I'm excited. Yeah, I didn't do the last year's. I was sad that I didn't sign up to speak or try to get on there, but I'm glad I'm going to be on this time.
Yeah,
me too.
So we're hoping. Yeah. I don't want Dipcatcher to give away the whole bag, but just a tease for what could be on tonight's virtual conference. But yeah, it looks outstanding. Looks like we have even tomorrow coffee. Looks like SJ. Oh, I wanted to ask you this. So I see the Hex Orca is on for the first hour tomorrow. Have you heard from him? Is that confirmed?
That is not confirmed. This graphic.
So we're gonna have some drama leading up
into
the first hour,
and we have that spot filled with an amazing replacement. Nobody can replace Orca, and we hope that he'll come back to the community when he's ready.
Oh, is that spot open? Could we leave it open just for ratings' sake? You never know if Orca could show up.
Of course.
There
Of
you go.
course. If yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Yes. And so then we've got Gerardo and RH Max and Sharp and Cryptographics that are going to be in the third hour today. That's going to be really amazing. In the evening, Johnny Chaos is not able to make it. Unfortunately, he sends his best regards, but he has a personal matter that came up, and of course he made it out to the meetup we did in Northern Illinois here a couple months ago, where Art Morikawa donated $2 million to an animal shelter. And
I saw that. That was awesome.
Yeah, I really appreciate Johnny showing up in person for that. That was epic. So we have a somebody to replace him that will also be a great surprise for the final social panel tonight. And then, really day 3 is going to be epic. We got these leaders in the Hex community, including Cabana Crypto. We have the members of the community that really stand out as well, that are also in a leadership role and building communities with Crypto Sparbuck and Crypto Coffee and SJ. And then this this series of segments with Richard is going to be pretty epic. It's not what we've done exactly in the past. We're going to start off with a 5-level panel. So Richard can explain PulseChain to a middle school student, a high school student, a college student, a crypto YouTuber who doesn't know about Hex and PulseChain, and an expert. And so he'll go through each level explaining PulseChain, and then he'll go through each level explaining Hex.
I bet his explanation to a kindergartner is going to be more complex than his explanation to an expert.
I can't wait to see what he comes up with. And part of this is going to be impromptu, but we know Richard is good at that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Is there going to be like a Q&A as well?
So all we know is that that'll be in a 30-minute segment. So we'll fill up the segment however we can. The millions of views have been generated in this type of a format on YouTube. It started with like Wired and UCLA professor getting together and doing this type of a 5 levels of difficulty format. But that'll be for half an hour. And if, it'll be like Richard explains something, then the person he's explaining it to asks 1 or 2 questions and then summarizes what they learned, and then on to the next person. So that's the format. And if we don't fill the whole half an hour, then we'll do a Q&A with all of them at the end. Then the next half an hour of Richard on screen is going to be him with Jack Levin, which we got a taste of that yesterday in Twitter Spaces, but Jack was kind of like not explaining how much he admires Richard or how much he like appreciates his brilliance. And so I think this time, because Jack sold Richard the $30 top. Jack bought Bitcoin at $1. So that's going to be fascinating to have a couple of guys who I assume are Bitcoin billionaires, to have them both on screen at the same time for the first time ever. And then I'm going to interview Richard for half an hour and do something a little different than I normally do. And then we'll have him speak for half an hour as a keynote, and then do a social where we pretty much, plug people in who have already spoken at numerous events before, and do a social with Richard for the last hour.
Outstanding. Looking forward to it. El Piton Bolas. What time do they start?
2 hours from now.
2 hours from now, 8 Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. So there
you can go to pulseconference.online to see the schedule and the link to join.
There you go. And we are reaching our highest amount of viewers for the show so far right now live. So I want to see all you guys there in that chat later on. So no excuses, because I see you in here. All right. Well, thank you, Maddie, for
thanks for putting this on.
Absolutely. Just
pleasure.
Putting it on and giving us the lowdown there.
If I can make a couple more comments. So
go for it.
So I'm no longer associated with Tony, T Money, PulseCon, anything like that. And so I'm not going to throw any shade. I'm not going to explain anything, but because I think it's just best for the community. I know people have already bought tickets for that. I have my reasons for not, not working with him anymore, but I don't want anybody in the community to lose out or to feel like they have to pick sides or anything. And so I'll leave it at that, people have seen me throw my full support behind other community members who are doing in-person events. I was there for 6 out of the 40 cities that Crypto Sparwalk was at, and they falsely credited me with, popularizing their tour. I think they popularized it, but every time A-Bit speaks, he says I did, I say he did, and we all have a good laugh. But at the end of the day, I respect and admire a lot of the people who are building, who are competing, who are doing what they do best here in the ecosystem. And so that's the message I want. That's what I want the headline to be, is that I'm doing my own thing, and but at the same time, the whole reason I'm doing this is to cross promote, because I think that's the way that we win together. Is because when people see you cross promoting and being positive, that's what they want to be a part of.
No, I agree with that. I think that was I saw you in Chicago, but even before that, I think I saw you in Daytona, and that was like one of the, we spoke briefly, but
Washington, D.C. Whoa.
Yeah. But yeah, well, like one of the main things that we briefly touched on was like the cross promotion, and you brought it up there, and it needs to be a consistent message. And, I'm a fan of pretty much everybody I've met in the Hex community. And it's, I understand, as dudes with, 95% of crypto is dudes, and, not every guy is going to see eye to eye, or there's going to be personality conflicts and all that. But at the same time, in the end, in the grand scheme of things, we are all on the same team. So, I appreciate everyone's efforts, yours, those of others, those of other content creators. Thank you so much for putting this on.
I have 2 things to show really quick before I go back to trying to make sure everybody has what they need for tonight.
Sticker guy,
would that be okay?
Is he? Yeah, go for it.
Sticker guy. Sticker guy.
Shout out to him, because
he bought the top. He's never been in profit, so I'm paying him to help with this conference, and I also am giving him mad props. But he's a great example of somebody who's so enthusiastic about our community, just like we were whenever we were in the red and never saw a green candle in Hex before in the early days. I have
some of his stickers.
Oh, that's awesome.
Was that an RH
you
autographed laptop?
That was, it's rubbed off, but this is Richard's. It used to say Mad Gains, Richard Hart. But, he signed it when I was in Zurich, and I got it from Sticker Guy there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I was half joking that was an RH autograph, but
it was an RH. It's rubbed off, but it is.
So I am doing still a anti-suicide movement for just the bear market. And so I'm paying people some of my pulse points if they make a suicide prevention plan. The website for that is cryptosaveslife.com. And it takes you to the blog post, or you can go to my Medium or allmylinks.com/all-in. You're going to find it. And we've already had 12 people sign up to make a suicide prevention plan. Another thing that I'm promoting is I'm doing a free chain analysis 101 course. I was originally charging $99 for it. Now I opened it up to anybody who did a PulseChain or PulseX sacrifice. So that's like 120,000 people. And if you want to lie and copy somebody else's transaction ID because it's on the public blockchain, then you could get the course even if you didn't sacrifice for those 2 things. Just don't sacrifice now. You don't want to waste your money sacrificing now. But so that's we're looking into the OA so that we can prove that the OA has never sold. We're looking into all these projects that people sacrifice for. We're teaching people how to, use tax software so that they don't get in trouble if they're into that sort of thing. So there's all kinds of things that people can do when they learn a little bit more about chain analysis. So people can learn about that at pls.academy.
Definitely,
Boom.
definitely. I'm going to take that. I think that's amazing. Your gift, even your gift of telling people to copy other people's transactions to get it for free. That's the best marketing, anti-marketing I've ever heard of. Pretty cool.
They have to learn. Yeah, you have to learn enough about chain analysis. Go on etherscan.io and type in PulseChain sacrifice and then copy somebody's transaction. So thank you guys so much for having me on. I watch Cabana's show almost every week and love it. I'm so honored that you included me today. And I appreciate everything all three of you are doing for this.
Heck yeah, man. I see you in the chat. I try to call you out every time you're in the chat. I appreciate, you taking the time to at least be in the chat. I know I end up catching a lot of these streams in replay, so I can't comment in the live chats, but I at least for big events like last night, I definitely gotta get in that and say hi to everybody in the chat, and can't wait for the next 2 nights. It's gonna be awesome. So thank you for coming by, man.
My pleasure. Yeah, thanks guys. We'll see you later tonight at the conference.
Awesome. Thanks.
That guy, man, there's a lot of hard workers inside the community. I think that guy is underappreciated sometimes. Hosting as many hours as he puts together, as much advanced planning as he puts into his, not just his shows, but like this kind of conference thing. There's an overhead cost that you can look at as in bookkeeping and say, here's what my cost was, here's where I break even, here's where I made anything. And I don't think you ever get back the time and resource and compassion he has for this community. Maddie's a good guy. I like Maddie.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Yep. And as Briz brings up, Maddie is a hardworking hexkin, but so is this guy down below, Dip Catcher. So I don't want to steal all of the thunder from the conference tonight, but I did shoot you over a message because you have so much going on. Not just, I guess, team and base, which we've touched on this show in recent weeks, but there are more coins evidently that I need to catch up on. So can you give us just like a grand overview without, I guess, spoiling any details of what you could get into tonight, but touch on what is all going on with the Maxi ecosystem, because this thing's about to just grow kind of, I guess, exponentially here in the next few weeks, as I understand it. But you go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, hopefully we'll see. But in general, like for people just finding out about this, with Maximus, we're building just a suite of smart contracts that enable trustless pooling of hex staking. It introduces a couple new value propositions to the end user, and it's also really beneficial for expanding the financial utility of hex. And so what the first one that we launched was a max length stake pool. So we pooled about 294 million hex. It ended up being like the fourth or fifth largest max length stake ever. And maxed out all the bonuses, pulled all that hex and staked it for 15 years. And then that stake is now backed by the token Maxi, which is fully tradable and fully liquid right now. And then at the end of the stake, it's redeemable for the hex plus the yield plus the hedgeron that it produced. So that was like that was our first foray into the stake pooling thing.
And in terms of price appreciation, it's actually done better than hex.
Yeah, it's right now it's at 2. The price is 2 hex to buy 1 Maxi right now.
Wow.
Part of that is the market just pricing in future earnings.
Yep.
Part of it is preparation for the team launch. And part of it is just because a lot of people minted Maxi purely as an alternative to holding staked max length hex on their own. Because, the gas fees alone are just a massive savings. So, there's just not many people that are trying to sell it to 2x, because a lot of people are estimating it'll be between like 6 and 10 hex on redemption. And so people that are using it for that long-term staking use case, like they're not selling at any price. So there's, at any given time, there's really, only a couple million Maxi for sale compared to the whole 294 million total supply. And the supply is very evenly distributed. So what it shows is that there's demand like across the whole spectrum of people who want to hold liquid, exposure to max length or just any length of hex stake. And so kind of with all the people that were so enthused by it, all times people were giving kind of, other ideas of, like other types of stake pooling and kind of what we picked up from that is that people wanted some variety, because some people think that, like, you know, they're like they want it, they may not want to wait for the redemption for 15 years. And even though it's like at a premium now, it could be at a steep deficit for years at a time. Like, look at the Bitcoin GBTC grayscale discount. Like, discounts can absolutely happen, especially in bear markets. And so, you know, there's all, even though it, you know, it is liquid, you could be in a situation where there's not a buyer at the price you want and you're selling it at a loss. And so, kind of allowing people to spread out across other just like staking strategies seemed like something that people really wanted. And also giving that variety helps us just capture more people who would otherwise be wasting a bunch of money paying Ethereum to the miners. Because those gas, like with everyone staking on their own, especially as the stakes stack up and they get longer, the gas that's like material impact that we can hold money inside of Hex. And so the stake pooling is just in general really important. It has a lot of really good user benefits, and I think it's really part of, you know, kind of moving. And I think this is what Gary was touching on, where kind of like Hex is kind of like center, like foundational reserve asset in this ecosystem, and then there's going to be these things built on top of it that have their own market cycles. I think that these coins that are backed by various length stakes of Hex are going to be really important financial infrastructure for, you know, kind of continuing to build upon Hex as a reserve asset. And so, what the way we're rolling this out is, at first, and I think Goldkey was on last week or so talking about before, because the original plan was that we were going to do team and then base, and then in a couple months do a 3-year and kind of stagger them out. But then, like, honestly, we're just like, fuck it, let's just launch them all at once. And, you know, kind of lean into some of the like extravaganza around launching, including team. This is now 5 tokens being launched in a single, like, it's the team contract that deploys all these other ones. So adding these new ones didn't add any effort to deploy them. And so this team contract, and then which deploys these pools. And so, you know, we thought that just giving people options, that, you know, it would encourage more participation.
Can I ask, before you go on, does the perhaps not so imminent but unknown launch date of PulseChain have any effect on getting these things to market? Or
yeah, that was a big piece of it too, because it's like, even though like once PulseChain launches, they'll kind of, you know, they'll become independent. Ideally, with like the initial baseline supply is identical across both of them, purely like for no other reason other than it makes it easier to make sense of the price of one on Pulse versus one on ETH. Because with these stake pools, that price ratio between the stake pool on ETH versus the stake pool on Pulse, it actually gives really good information about how the market is appraising the future earnings, meaning the future stake rates on ETH versus Pulse, and then also how it's appraising the gas prices on ETH versus Pulse over those varying timeframes. So it actually gives really good information about how the market is assessing Ethereum and PulseChain in itself. And so starting with a equal supply at the PulseChain fork, that even though it's not critical to its operation, that's just like a really nice thing to have. And so that was another reason why we didn't want to like stagger them out for too long. And yeah, just because we want to get it all out, you know, by PulseChain launch.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And so those, you know, 4 pools, those are just like Maxi, except for Maxi was one and done. There's no restaking of Maxi. There's only redemption. Whereas these ones, it'll go from like a minting and redemption phase to the stake, then a minting and redemption phase to the stake. And so every time that one of these stakes ends, you can redeem your Hex at the, you know, the rate that it gives you, or you can mint more Hex at that new rate and just add to the pool. And so you'll always, you know, just because they come in years 1, 3, 7, 10. There's basically no more than 2 years that goes by without, I mean, there's the 1-year one that happens every year, but aside from that, there's like, you know, like there's always 1 or 2 of them to participate in every year or 2. And so there's really high overlap kind of across the range. So like new people that are getting onboarded, even if they're not here for this initial mint, it's like they can get in at a fair rate every 3 years for the, you know, for Trio, which is 3 years, every 7 years for Lucky, every 10 years for Deci, and every year for Base. So There's kind of always an option to, no matter kind of when you got in.
And those were all names of tokens.
Yeah. So base is the 1 year stake. Trio is a 3 year stake. Lucky is a 7 year stake. And then
Nice.
Desi is a 10 year stake. And they're all the same contract. The only thing that's different is that when you deploy them, you say stake for 365 days or stake for 900,000 days, whatever it is. So that's the only difference in those contracts. And then then all of those contracts that, like, the whole growth team is the whole growth catalyst for all of this, where part of the bigger pays better bonus that is earned from the yield that is produced from that amount of T shares that are bigger pays better. Like when you look on the go.hex.com where it says the effective hex and then like the bigger pays better, like effective hex, like, so from whatever those bigger pays better T shares earned, team gets half of that. And so it comes out to on the base stake for a maxed out 150 million stake, that comes out to like 0.5% of the total earnings after the fact. And then on the 10 or on the 7 year stake, it's actually the largest. That effective fee comes out to like 1.2% of the total yield, or of the total value of the principal plus the yield that it earned. So it's actually like a very modest, like kind of standard type of fee, and people seem to be fine with it because between the gas savings and then the liquidity option, that kind of more than makes up for it. And if these people who are staking in these pools are probably also going to be staking in team, so team is kind of earning it back. So it's all the way I kind of view team, where team is really the Maximus DAO token. I view team as kind of like, when you sign up for the shoppers club at the grocery store and then you get a discount on, the products there.
Right.
It's kind of like that, where by staking team, you gets back some of that bonus that is being shared, from those stake pools. So it's just effectively like you got a discount. And if you're make up a larger percent of the team stake than you do of any one of these pools, it's as if you're earning like a 20% greater or bigger pays better bonus. So there's like, so it's, and the whole point of the team, like the whole reason why it's involved is because we want there to be a group of people that have skin in the game and are incentivized to be onboarding new people coming in to these, to Hex via these stake pools, locking up a bunch of Hex, and then continuing to be like the marketing and growth force that, kind of pushes this whole stake pooling ecosystem forward. And we thought that drawing from, making it entirely like a performance-based commission, drawing entirely from, only yield that was from bigger pays better, we thought that was fair because, if those stakes are small, then team's not making much. If they're big, then team can make something. But then also that bigger pays better, that's yield that people wouldn't have got staking on their own. You can get longer pays better staking on your own, but you really can't get bigger pays better without staking on your own. And so that's like money that people only made because they participated in the pool. So we thought that, like, for those two reasons, there's actually like a really fair place to draw from, for that. Like, if we're going to break off part of the yield and incentivize someone with it, we thought that that was like the right type of incentive and the right type of balance there.
Nice. Well, thank you for doing exactly as I asked, like that overall top-down kind of view there. Bluebum asks, can you explain what team holders must do once a year and what happens if they don't?
Yes. So to earn that yield from the perpetual pools, base, trio, lucky, and desi, to earn that bigger pays better bonus share, you have to stake your team for the entire year. So the 1 year base contract is actually like the calendar for the whole system. So in order to earn your portion of the earnings of the team contract, you have to have staked your team before the base stake started, and you have to leave it staked until the base stake ends. So the staking comes in these 1 year increments where you have to lock in before the base. And if you stay that whole year, you get your portion of all the hex that is delivered to the team contract during that year from whatever source, whether they be these contracts here or other future unknown, unnamed contracts that may also be deciding to incentivize team. So it doesn't matter really where the hex comes from, but hex that arrives in the team contract is split up and divided to team stakers every year. And to prevent people with they're inactive or people that are dead or otherwise just like not there to claim those rewards, we're making it so that you have to check in with the contract at least once a year to keep your stake active. And so you effectively roll forward your stake into the next period at any time during the current period. And so that's just because we don't want people who abandon their keys or lose them to be absorbing those earnings. Like it's, meant to be like for active participants who are trying to grow this whole system. So there is like, there is that, strict, it's like the staking happens in 1 year increments. And you only get the payout if you stake the whole period. And if you early end stake during your period, you lose 3.69% of your team. And so there's like this early end stake penalty that is like constant deflationary pressure on the team supply. Just that, because maybe you stake your team because you're going to get some yield, but then maybe the team price goes up 1,000x that year, and you're like, okay, I'm going to sell some. I'm fine with losing 3.69% because I'm up thousands of percent. So, there will be that calculus that people make where, if the price just gets too high, then they'll tolerate that 3.69% early end stake fee, which really just gets distributed to everyone equally because it's never reminted into existence. So it's like that person just like lost supply and no one else got it. It just never was reminted. And so, so the team supply is deflationary over time. And that's just kind of to regulate, to try to ensure that like, it's honestly part to keep a kind of a ceiling on the price. Cause it can get kind of silly if like these pools are so massive and it's earning so much that like 100% of the team supply is staked going after that yield. And then like that, or maybe like a tiny fraction. And then the price is just so high that it's just like stupid. Like that person's going to get wrecked. So it's kind of better to like allow for the unstaking and there to be a modest, but something that people will eat if it's really, lucrative selling opportunity. So it's all like, so that adds deflationary pressure, which, helps the long-term price, but then also, kind of makes it so that it limits the amount of people that buy some like ridiculous peak in the price and then are just like wrecked and pissed off and not so happy. So it's kind of like a circulating supply, like regulating thing, where that penalty, it's there, but it's not that, it's not that bad. Like people nuke their early end stakes for way worse in Hex to, for the same reason, when price is pumping, you can eat that fee because like your net is up so much. Yep. So it's kind of a similar dynamic there.
Gotcha. Thank you for that explanation. Funding Jim, if we still have you via audio, any questions on Maximus, any of these new potential products, or not potential products, but forthcoming products?
So I did buy Maxi in the past when it first came out. I was looking forward to learning more about Team. I'll digest it more a different time. But it's great he's going to do his stream later on the conference, and then I can dig into it a little bit more. There was a position that someone had put, I think it was Twitter, and they were saying, Hexicans don't embrace new things. When it's built on the product of Hex, it seems like it's aligned incentive. So I like Maximus, because it speaks to the store of value narrative, the delayed gratification narrative, even though, the smart contract locks up Hex, right? It's sequestering Hex. And so that supply and demand narrative still applies. It just gives people opportunity to hold a placeholder, and that placeholder is liquid, right? So I like Maximus, and I'll have to dig into some of these shorter rolling stake opportunities. But yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool deal. Yeah. Cool deal. I see Gold Key is in the chat, trolling. So hey, what's up?
Maximus Meridius.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty, I'm very happy with just like how well it's been received. There's been very little like opposition in general. I think part of it is because all the things that people like about Hex, like the kind of those core values of like no admin keys, fully trustless, unstoppable contract, where you mint your coins at the start, like into a finished product, like all those things that people liked about Hex, those are like my key criteria where like I won't compromise on any of those factors for any of these contracts, like that we're launching through Maximus. So like a lot of those same core values, like they already align. So you're already starting like in agreement there. And then from there, it's like for people to decide, like the only thing that people had to decide is if they thought it was a good idea for, stakes to become liquid. And I think Hedron actually kind of started to fight that battle because it launched like a couple of weeks before we did. So, Hedron kind of fighting that battle and then like paying people that massive airdrop to like pretty much be on board with it, or at least kind of like think positively about that concept. I think that actually cleared a lot of way for us, kind of coming in with like an entirely different solution. Like theirs is a non-fungible, saleable Hex stake. Ours is a completely fungible stake. So they're kind of two opposite ways to deliver salability into a stake. And so it's kind of just a blessing of the timing. At first I was disappointed that it took me so long to kind of build it. I was goofing off too much on Twitter, I wished I was trying to get it out in like February, but then literally it took me so long. But Alex kind of, launching his thing and then kind of quelling a lot of that initial, just like kind of that initial opposition. People see something new and they just like walls up. And so I think Alex really broke through, and then that enabled people to be very receptive of our solution. And then, and it's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, the savings for the regular end user, it's kind of a no-brainer that like, if you have less than $10,000 that you're going to staking one of these pools provides massive savings to you, because that gas, it's a constant cost and it's variable. So, today it's low, but like in the past, it's been really high, and it doesn't matter how big your stake is. It really only matters how long it is. And so those users, all paying the same fee, whereas in these pools, like you're not responsible for paying that fee at all. And so like there's some basic benefits that make this a really strong alternative to staking on your own for like the smaller users. So it's kind of like a no-brainer there. But I'm very lucky that people have received all of this stuff so positively. And yeah, I mean, and people seem to continue to like it, like almost every single day, there's more buy orders on the Maxi chart than there are sell orders. And it's, really helped. And I think people are really happy about it because it's helped curb some of those downside losses from this recent bear market, where like Hex is at 3.5 cents, Maxi's at 7 cents. Like, 7 cents, that's a solid Hex price, and so Maxi, for the people that minted, they've had a positive experience, so far on that. The only people I know who are disappointed with Maxi are the people that minted and then sold when the price was like 1.25. I think it's the only like someone who's upset about their outcome with Maxi. But it's been a pretty well received thing in general.
Yeah, I have to agree on that. And of course, I mean, that's with any coin though, right? So, I mean, a coin like Hex, somebody could have, I guess, sold after, in the initial months and just not benefited had they held, since then and just benefited massively. So that small group could, complain and moan about that. Just like frequent viewer and friend of the show, Brizology, talks about PLSD is a top tier shitcoin and benefits hexagons in no way. There, I said it. Sir, did you free claim yours? And if you free claimed and got a couple hundred, you could have sold for $500. I think you would have benefited. I think it benefits all hexagons. You can sell it and then go away. So
see, it benefits like the category of people who want to take on extra risk for extra gain. Like that's a totally valid use case, because a lot of people, they didn't get to experience the 1000x gain in hex, but they want that, and so they're willing to lever up and take more and more risk. And it's like I think people are free to launch and choose, launch anything they want and choose to invest in anything they want. And it's just like all part of that like risk reward game. And then and what those things kind of symbolize to me at least is that like they don't want like with the base, for instance, like the rolling 1 year stake that's earning like 14% on your hex per year, and then the value is like mainly driven by hex. And so like some people, that's not enough for them. Like they want to take the chance, they want that lottery ticket chance. And so I do see a place for for even things much more egregious than PLSD, because there's kind of nothing wrong with it, and there's especially when PulseChain comes out, and especially if there's like a big run up in like hex, PulseChain, like all the big all the Maximus products, and like people watch these like big runs up and they want to attain those gains like later in the cycle, like we're going to see some egregious dog shit out there just from that high risk, that appetite for taking on more and more risk to try to chase that 1000x gain. And so, this probably isn't like, this will be a ever recurring thing. And people always target the group of people that have the money, right? Like you want to market your coin into a group of people that, are flexing Rolexes and Lamborghinis, and, you want to sell into that cohort. And so like, it kind of makes sense that people are, attracted to the hex community for launching new coins into.
One more question. I gotta find it here before we get out of here. And where did it go? Because it was a rather lengthy one, or a comment / question from PVM. All right. So his argument is Maxi is not hex. It never will be. Period. It's just hex staked for 5555. That's not entirely what hex is. That's only one piece of it. What are you going to do? Make a point, or excuse me, make a coin for every position of time forever. I mean, no, well, it's not hex. That's
yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
Well, so like it doesn't make sense to like make a coin for like every day, because then it's just like, what's the point?
Right.
It's like 1 year is like, and that's why even with this new cohort of coins with base, trio, lucky, and that's even the way we space them. It's like we thought about doing literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, but it's like, okay, 1 year is basically 2 years, and 2 years is basically 3 years. So like we don't need to 4 and 5, that kind of blends. Like it's only like 25% difference from 4 to 5, 20% difference from 5 to 6, 18% difference from 6 to 7. So it's like that's all kind of the same range. So like that's kind of why we broke them up in that way. And I think I get the point that he's trying to make, that like Maxi was a 555 base stake that started on May 1st, and by now it's been like 75 days later. So now it's like Maxi is a what would that be, like 5,480, if my math's right, like a 5,480 day stake.
Yeah,
like
so a couple months are already down.
Yeah, but then the price is 2 to 1, and so now like if you're buying Maxi for that stake, now it's like you're buying into like, say, I don't know what that would be, like a 13-year stake. So like that's so I kind of get what he means, that like it's, you're not buying a 5,555 day stake today. Depending on how what you calculate like the effective value of that stake to be, it is kind of like a different stake. But like maybe that's okay for that user, where like to them they're like, okay, like what really is the difference to me if like I'm comparing like yield over 13 years to 15 years when I can just buy this thing right now. And also, I mean, people are buying Maxi because like the whole team launching mechanism, which I didn't really touch on here, that's like massively deflationary on the Maxi supply. So that like really boosts the end value. So like Maxi may kind of take on a life of its own. And then these stakes right here are going to be kind of like the foundation. Like we thought 1, 3, 7, and 10 is like a good foundation for just like these rolling stakes. It'll go these will go on forever. But it's definitely not like you think these are the last types of stake pools that we've thought of. Like they're all kind of the same, and it's really just changing the rules on how it works. And so these definitely aren't the last types of pools. I don't think we'll be making a new pool for every day, because then it's kind of but you may see some wacky, egregious shit out of us.
So is this on the new version? So Maxi is a one and done, and people can buy the token, speculating on what the future value will be of a. Now, if they bought in, it'd be a 5,400 day kind of stake, right? And they're still estimating some time in the future from the mint date to 5555 out, what is the price going to be out there? And they're speculating on that and buying Maxi today, right? Is that basically the theme behind it?
Yeah.
And then on the new ones, as far as team and the rolling stakes, it sounded like, is it that one token, when it matures, then you can redeem, and you're getting more hex that you can put into the next stake. So it is like a roll. You have an optionality of, I'm going to sell hex that comes out of yield and unlocking into the marketplace when that matures, or hold for a certain amount of time, then sell soon after. Or is it it's not mandatory to roll over, is what you're saying, right? You always have an option of getting out, basically. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Like in between these stakes, there will be like a 7 to 10 day, haven't decided exactly what that number of days is, but like a 7 to 10 day redemption period.
Yeah.
And at that new redemption period, existing stake tokens can be redeemed, or new ones can be minted at that new rate. So
okay, so that future rate, say it's 2 years into the contract, and then that future T-share rate, that's what the new minting, the new number of hex yield mints into the new contract and new T-share rate. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So for the base contract, it's probably going to be about 13%.
Yeah.
And so at the start, like in this initial minting of base, you mint one base with one hex, but after a year, because it has earned that yield, it sets the new redemption rate to principal plus yield divided by base supply. The new minting rate will be about 1.13. And so users at that time, if they have base, they can burn one base to redeem 1.13 hex, or a new user with hex who just wants to join the pool can put in 1.13 hex and then mint one base. So that minting and redemption rate is like it keeps it so that ratio is the same no matter how much is withdrawn or removed. And then from there, it starts again to the next period. And so that minting and redemption only happens in that window. During the stake, there's nothing to redeem because it's all staked, but you can sell it at that time. But then after, so those regularly recurring redemption rates, that rate ratchets up and it's effectively just like a measure of the earnings over that period. So like if the stake earns 60%, like for Trio, maybe that'll be like a 60% possibly. So then after 3 years, that one ratchets up to 1.6, because over those 3 years it earned 20% per year, whatever that comes out to. And so they'll kind of diverge, where like base, because it's like the most frequently redeemed one, there's less upside, there's less blue sky you can paint into future earnings. Like you can very accurately estimate the next year's earnings, and you can kind of accurately estimate 3 years earnings. 7 years, kind of where it starts to, a lot of things can change in that time that drastically change the payout per T-share. And same with the 10-year one. So maybe on Lucky and Deci, there's a much wider range that the price could trade in, like kind of as it trends to the end value, maybe higher premiums and also times of very, very deep discounts. Whereas with these 1 and 3 year stakes, there's a lot less risk. So they earn less yield, but those ones will probably be more liquid, because any deviation from like a very, very, certain number of what it's going to be worth at the end, it's kind of like a no-brainer buying opportunity. And so there's probably going to be a lot smaller of a like a price range that those smaller ones go into, so like there's kind of that less reward, but there's more certainty. So like those are like on like the shorter the stake, kind of like the less risky it is. And then you kind of, it's compensated, you reduce risks. That means you also reduce the yield. And so it's kind of, so people that just kind of depending on their time preference and, how soon they really need the money and how much they're willing to risk, like them needing the money to time up when with when there's a good premium on whatever token they hold. People kind of have that option to determine what's a good way to hold these coins, and they're going to save massively on gas than just constructing their own staking ladder. Just like holding a balance of these coins is an alternative to holding a staking ladder, and the gas savings plus the liquidity benefit can really provide a lot of value to those users.
Very interesting. Yeah, I'll have to dig into it more, and I'll watch more of your content specifically about this. I did see other questions. I don't know if Cabana's going to bring them up or not, but it's
I had a couple
after the 7 days.
Yeah, I'll do that one too. Sandy Beach. Do we know when the minting? I think that's probably the biggest question. When mint?
Yeah. So right now the contracts are actually done. I'm still like just working through just making sure everything is like optimized and good. But as far as the, like on testnet, if you're a sleuth, you can see what's going on testnet on PulseChain. But like the team contract, which allows the minting of maxi 1-to-1. So you mint 1 maxi per team. It does the whole like team minting sequence. It does all the team staking and all the team claiming. And then also, the pool contracts, those all work too. It deploys those pools. So the whole contract is actually done. I'm still optimizing and, still finding things that like, would have been problems, and just, really just kind of honing in on the final version. And then the next step is to just undergo audit. So I've already started engaging with the auditor that we're going to be working with. So just as soon as like I'm, produce a version that's like hopefully final, is when we'll pass it off to be audited. And then at that same time, we'll launch a version on testnet that, like an abbreviated version, maybe with like 1 day, 3 day, 7 day, and 10-day stakes, and then the team staking going on for those periods. So we'll, get a version on testnet. And so as soon as audit and like a full testnet sequence has been complete, then there's nothing really standing in the way from there. So I don't have a solid date. I'm really shooting for end of the month. But
software takes time.
Yeah. Who knows what, who knows if there's going to be a 6-hour Twitter space that comes on with all these people where I listen to that instead of work. You know what I mean? Like life can happen.
July 32nd, that whole thing.
Yeah. And so hopefully, I mean, the contract itself is done. Who knows how long the like kind of finalization process will be. But we really should be ready here in the next handful of weeks. I'm not, who knows what delays could occur.
I think this might have been the one that Gary was referencing, CryptoBD. What happens when any of these end stake? What happens if you hold on to the coin but don't do anything? Is the money lost if you don't redeem in the 7 to 10 day window?
No. So for these, for the stake pools, you just roll into the next one. So you still have your coin, and then so say on base stake, for instance, that stake ends. Now it's redeemable at 1.14 or 1.13. Then you miss that, but then you wait for the next one. Now your base is redeemable for like 1.26. So
and Marco's, I guess, kind of like a timely question here. Any incentive for the folks who roll over?
No, one, just because like I didn't want to introduce too much new stuff. That is a good idea. Because I really view these stakes as indices on the earnings, like the earning capacity of the of Hex in general. I actually really wanted to keep it purely like 1-to-1, fairly split, and then to only draw that like team bonus sharing from something that they only got as a result of participating in the pool. So I didn't add any like other types of like bonuses and stuff. But that is a really good idea. And there's actually some really cool something that a contract that I plan on launching if I get around to it at some point that kind of has a dynamic like that, but maybe not how he's thinking of it right there. But there's that type of thing where you even further kind of like figure out how to allocate the earnings of a stake based on certain desirable activities. That is a really good idea, but it's not implemented in these ones. These ones are like clear cut staking and rollover, and then but without too much other extra game theory.
Nice. I think that brings us through to the end of the questions, which is good because battery life is dying down. And I think about an hour, 10 minutes, we have the PulseChain virtual conference night 2 over with Matty Allen. So that's awesome. Yes, Dingo Wolf, greetings to you, my good friend. Good morning, Dip. All right. Always a fun person in chat. But where can we find you guys? I guess we'll start with you, Dipcatcher, and because it's not Dipcatcher on Twitter. So tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, so on Twitter, it's Tokenomics. Also, t.me. So we only have one Telegram chat for all of the Maximus stuff. It's t.me/Maximus DAO. Do not fall for fake chats. There's almost every day someone tells me there's a fake Tonto DMing them, asking for money, saying minting, like all kinds of stuff. Do not fall for fakes. Only go to the t.me/Maximus DAO. Follow me on Twitter. That's where everything that comes out comes from my Twitter first. So follow me on Twitter at Tokenomics. And then it's nothing about these new pools is on the site maximus.cash right now, but here in the next couple of weeks, there will be more information about all this new stuff on maximus.cash. And then follow on Twitter, Maximus_DAO. Also follow Goldkey. And yeah, Twitter is kind of the main spot for us.
Goldkey's got a 3 in there, right?
Yeah.
Because I just say this for those who might not be watching on YouTube, might just been doing the audio. So when you say your handle, it's TANTONOMINI, and then Goldkey. You can tell me Goldkeys because I know there's a 3 in there.
Yeah.
Like, is there a 0? So it's at
no, I
gold.
I think there's
K3Y. Goldkey. If you're in the chat, throw it in there, and then I'll yell it out. But yeah, thank you for that. Funding Jim, where can we find you? I mean, I think I found you everywhere this week. You did your own video, which I have. It's in my queue for the playlist. You just did one with Corey Costa, I think, which is in my queue. You were on Maddie's panel last night. You were in Twitter Spaces, but where can we find you?
Yeah, commenting about the YouTube. If you go to YouTube/Funding Jim, I just posted, also put it in Twitter, the 5.5-hour Twitter space that was that Richard was in, Tone Vase, David Gochstein, also Dixon, Simon Dixon. They were talking a lot about Celsius. They were talking obviously about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and NFTs. So I'm trying to be better about my hashtags. Anyways, I did put a video up, and what's different versus the replay on the normal way that Twitter puts it up is you can see when I do it, the actual handle for the audience members or the speakers. And if you do watch that video, maybe have a pen and paper beside you. And if it's something that you think some person spoke about that's interesting, tag on the tweet, their tag plus the time, because people love to hear themselves speak. And going through 5 hours, I think I had maybe 200 audience members. They all had check marks. I made sure that it was visible on screen, but I don't have the time to basically, I've already put like 10 or 12 hours into that process to even make it available. So if you do watch that, put the hashtag, be respectful inside my tweets. If you're calling people names and stuff like that, I'm going to end up at least taking your tweet down and maybe not following you anymore. So I don't follow people just because they're in Hex, just because they have logos in their name or something like that. I don't follow people just for those reasons. I follow them because I think that they bring merit, integrity, voice, calibration to the audience we haven't talked to yet. So if you're following my content, hopefully, I can retweet you happily. And the kind of content I put effort into putting out there is this kind of video stuff that makes it easy for people like Valiant Brand or anybody that chooses to slice it up, dice it up, download it, make a little 30-second snippet of what people say. And hopefully don't throw daggers at these people. Even if they say something pretty idiotic and stupid, don't call them idiots and stupid. Simply highlight the 2 points, and we can 10x our community size if we're just a little bit more polished and calibrated. But anyways, finding me, it's Funding Jim as always with an I, not an L. Make sure that's spelled correctly. Right. I'll never ask you for crypto. I'll never ask you for money. Don't ever just engage with conversation with some random person that asks how your trading is going on Instagram or something, because there's a rash of all that stuff. And I'm all over the search page if you Funding Jimmy.
Nice. Funding Jim him. And watch out for those underscores too. And I am Cabana Crypto, not a 0, but an O. And Gold Key for those just on audio at GOLDK3Y_. So there you go for you audio listeners who perhaps have YouTube Premium and take advantage of that, which I recommend as a service. Actually, it's well worth the $12 a month just to be able to listen to audio stuff and some of the other features there, like lack of ads and whatnot. Got asked earlier, I'm in the jungle. No, it was like actually awful weather, so that's kind of like a sunset out there. I think more weather is rolling in. That's why I'm in here. Wish I could have shared it with you like last week and the week before. But it's what it is. We'll hopefully be at a new destination next weekend. Thank you, everyone in chat. We had a great turnout. 1 hour till the PulseChain virtual conference. Thank you to Gunther for stopping by. Thank you for Matty Allen stopping by. Thank you for Dipcatcher, who's been here, doing his thing, and you can catch him tonight, probably in another hour or two. Not sure which hour you're in. What hour is that?
2 hours from now.
2 hours from now. And then, of course, Funding Jim, who's been everywhere, taking the time to be with us again. So always enjoy it. You guys rock, chat rocks, and we will see you all next week. Cheers, everybody. Thanks for
later.
stopping by.
Ciao.